How are you going to water your garden? That's what we're talking about today. Hi, I'm Amy Landers with Gardens That Matter, where we help families create beautiful, bountiful gardens together. And what can we learn from a tiny watering can about finding the best site for our garden? Your garden is gonna need water. And I want you to think about, if you have to water your garden, do you want to water it carrying a watering can back and forth, or do you want to find a place for your garden that makes it easy to water? So obviously the answer is you want it to be as easy to water as possible. While your small children would probably love to help you, I don't think you want it to be the only way that you get water to your garden. So let's talk about it. This week we have been talking about how to find the best place for your vegetable garden. If you are just starting out, this will help you find the best place to put it so that it'll work really well with your life and you will be able to see it often and care for it well. If you are an experienced grower, maybe you're thinking about adding some new things to your garden this year. And as you do that, maybe there's this place in your yard that's going to be even better to add some food to, because when you're gardening, you don't have to think about just having the vegetable plot, right? Like you don't have to have just one place where you have your garden. A lot of times we do that because we care for things in the same way, but with perennials, with some of your herbs, you can sprinkle them in other places where it's a good site for growing food. So far this week, we've found a convenient location that is a sunny spot, as sunny as we can, for most of us, unless you live in a place that's really hot and dry, in which case you may want a little more shade. So we're convenient, we're sunny, 6 to 8 hours of sun at least, and we have good soil. And if we don't have good soil there, you've maybe started to think about a plan for either improving that soil or going with containers or a raised garden. And today we're talking about water. So I went outside and found our watering can because that is my kids' #1 favorite chore in the garden. So sometimes we live in Western North Carolina, so sometimes we don't have to water our garden because we do get lots of rain here. But sometimes we'll have long stretches without rain. And so even though we live in basically a temperate rainforest where like everything is green, we also have periods of drought. So when you think about the native plants and animals where you live, you probably have some things that, like a weed, it grows fast, it flowers, it sets seeds, and it's done. So it'll grow right after the rain, right? The trees have deep roots and they store water. And so a lot of the perennial things can withstand drought because of that. But in our vegetable gardens, usually those are annual plants that need to have steady water to produce at their best. So, you know, a tomato may be able to produce fruits and seeds even when it's not having even water, but you'll have problems like blossom end rot, or if it's getting too much water, you might get like fungal problems. So we want to try to have a steady supply of water. Today we're not going to go into too much water. Let's just focus on when you need to water your garden, how you're going to think through that. So in general, a kind of rule of thumb to keep in your mind is that your vegetable garden, most of our annual vegetables that like to be babied, right? We've bred them to be well cared for by us. They will need about 1 inch of water per week. And you can help make them more drought resistant by having good organic matter, compost in your soil, by using mulch on the top to slow down evaporation, but you still may need to water, especially if you live in an arid place. So when you're siting your garden, how are you going to get water there? You have a couple of options, right? So one would be, of course, your watering can. Hopefully you have one that's bigger than this, right? Like you can get a couple gallons, and you can put your kids to work. Again, my kids love the watering chores. Another option is a hose. And if you're going to go with the hose, I recommend getting a sprayer with an arm. So you can see this has a nice arm, and this one has multiple settings, but I almost always use the shower setting. So I have another wand that just has like the shower head end. And sometimes I'll use the mist end if I'm dealing with like seedlings and I don't want to wash them away. But I highly recommend getting one of these wands. It makes it easy to reach over a bed. It is a great way to, even my 18-month-old can kind of water the garden with this. He was watering in our new strawberries when he just holds a hose, he ends up pouring it all over himself and getting really upset, because that happens sometimes too. But when I give him this, it's a little easier for him to figure out where the water is and not just spray himself. So if you want to get your kids involved, these wands are a great tool for them because it helps them direct it and like hold it with two hands, and can guarantee that they have an easy spray so they're not washing your plants away. You could also think about maybe having a rain barrel. Like if your garden is near the corner of your house, you could do a rain catchment system, a rain barrel, or more, even bigger. You know, if you live in a place where it makes sense to save more water, like if you have a monsoon season and you want to save that water for a longer period of time, it's definitely worth learning more about that. You might be able to use some gray water. You want to learn all about gray water and think about what you're putting into your water before it goes down the drain if you're going to use gray water. But we used to water some of our fruit trees and our lilacs with gray water from our washing machine, and we just used really safe soap that we knew it was recommended by gray water people. So if you want to learn more about that, there's definitely tons of information about using gray water out there, and I'm not going to be able to think of the name of the person off the top of my head, but I'll try to come back and add a link later on. So you've got your hose, you've got your system where you can be catching rainwater off of a nearby roof. Sometimes you might even want to put up a roof so that you have that. So I've seen compost systems where they put a cover over the compost so it keeps their compost from getting like the fluctuations of rain, and then they're able to collect that water and use it on their compost when they need it. So you could even think about that, like if you needed to put a shed up, maybe your shed goes on the north side of your garden in the northern hemisphere. It wouldn't shade your garden that way, and then provide some water. So as you're thinking about your garden planning, consider where your water is coming from and if you can use a source that is already there, already convenient, so that you can water your garden sustainably. You might also be thinking about if you're going to put in an automatic watering system, then you might think about, you know, is it going to come straight from your water meter, and is there a way to do that so that it all happens in the yard? Will you need electricity for any kind of automatic watering timers and things? They definitely have timers that don't need electricity, but if you're getting a more high-end system, sometimes they'll be wired in so that they're always connected, kind of a thing. Some of them will even connect to your computer in your house, so you can like tell it, oh, it rained today, we don't need to water. So you can get as complex as you want, but you know, the simplest is usually the best, especially when you're starting out. So as you plan your garden, consider these things, and we will be back tomorrow with a final element to consider in planning where your garden goes. And I'll also have a checklist for you from all the things we've talked about this week that you can go download and have it as you are planning your new garden area, whether you're just beginning or adding a new area. Hopefully it'll give you some ideas to help you really get the great fit. All right, if you have questions, pop them in the comments down below. I'll answer them tomorrow, or I can come back and answer them later tonight, even if you're watching the recording. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, happy gardening!